Welcome to another episode of On the Range. Today we're going to be looking at the Glock 19 and a long trigger pull. Let's get out on that range. Glock 19 with a New York 1 trigger, 10-pound trigger pull, and I was still able to hit the target each time. See, the trigger doesn't have to be the lightest thing in the world to be able to shoot it accurately, and there are certain advantages to having a heavier trigger. Let's go back to the shop and talk about it. Well, here we are back in the shop, and I'm glad we are. It was getting a little warm out there at 80 degrees. Just not quite used to that. Today we were shooting the Glock 19, a Gen 3 with a Galco Avenger holster, which is a direct vertical drop holster, using the PMag 15-round magazines. And I like these magazines for two reasons. Number one, you can number them. They have these indentations on the bottom of the magazine, and you just fill the dot with a little paint and you can number them. You should always number your magazines, keep track of them so you know which one's giving you trouble. Lots of times when you experience trouble with your firearms, it's a direct result of having a bad magazine. The other thing I like about them is you have these grooves here, serrations on either side of the floor plate, which gives you something you can grab onto to yank it out there, out of the magwell if you have to, if it gets stuck. But the real reason I like them is you can depress this button right here and slide the bottom of the magazine off. Yeah, something that's not so easy with the Glocks. So we're shooting the Glock 19, and I wanted to do that because I wanted to talk about the trigger pull. This happens to have a New York 1 trigger versus the New York 2, which is even heavier trigger pull. This one comes out at about a 10-pound trigger pull, which I know sounds like a lot, but it's not. That's pretty much what a revolver is, which is what I started on revolvers, so I'm comfortable with it being that way. But one of the reasons I like that is that as you pull the trigger, you got a little tension there, and it's easy, if you decide not to pull the trigger, to back off. If you get a stock Glock and then you start playing games with it to get an extra light trigger pull, that's going to make it very simple to get an accurate shot, because that thing's going to go off before you expect it because the trigger pull is so light. Well, in a self-defense situation, I want the opposite. I don't want that to go off before I intend it to go off. Matter of fact, I want it to tell me, are you sure? I want that trigger to be hard enough to pull that it's saying to me, are you sure you want to pull this trigger? And that's what I've picked up over all the years, that I'd rather be on having to take the extra effort to learn how to shoot that firearm accurately with that type of trigger that's going to be my friend in the real world, and say to me, are you sure, do you want to pull this trigger? Because you can still back off on it if you want to. I'd rather put the extra time and effort into learning how to accurately shoot that firearm with that kind of trigger than to have one that pops off real easy and I go, whoops, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Well, there you go. There's my little episode of On the Range today, and commercial free, by the way. Yeah, otherwise I couldn't talk about that. Thanks for tuning in. I'll leave you with a little more footage of me shooting this, and I'd like to say beautiful Glock 19, but yeah, quite frankly, they aren't very They aren't very pretty, no. But there's beauty in utility, I guess, and this certainly has utility and simplicity in design. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I'll leave you a little extra footage. Now for the fun part, finding that brass. Well, that ends another episode of On the Range. Till next time, from Mr. Holster, Dancer, and Pecos Patty, and Jack, go out and stay safe.